Hey guys, so today I'm here to share with you my October wrap-up. Yes, the thumbnail does not deceive you. I read 14 books in October. I'm not even sure how that happened because October's not even over yet. This video is a little weird for me right now, mostly because I'm filming it super early. It is October 29th, very late at night as I'm filming this. But I'm only doing that because my work schedule has been super busy and it's only going to get worse. I usually film and upload my wrap-ups on the last day of the month, but that wasn't going to happen. So I thought I needed the mental break today. I have enough that I want to talk about, and I don't know. It's also weird because I feel like my life's a little up in the air right now. I don't know really what I want to be doing. I'm kind of in a quarter life crisis. Weight loss has changed my life and the way I perceive my life going. I feel like there are a lot more options available to me than I thought there were before. So I'm just not sure what that means for me in terms of schooling, the fact that I work full-time in retail, but I'd rather be doing this. Like, I want to be participating in NaNoWriMo so badly, but cannot make that work with my full-time life in retail. So I don't know, thought I would bring it back to basics. I worked all day, so I toned it down in a sweatshirt that used to be very tight on me, so I'm kind of emotional about that. But yeah, enough of an intro, enough of me blabbering. I have so much that I want to talk about these books. Most of them were 2 stars, but then like half of them were 4 stars, so I was kind of all over the place this month, but let's just get right into it. The first book that I'm going to talk about is one that I technically finished on the last night of September, but I'm counting it in October, and that is Hooked When Addiction Hits Home by Chloe Shantz Hilks. This is a teeny anthology about addiction, as you can gather from the title. So I think this is only about 100 pages, and there's about 8 stories or so. So it's about addiction, but more so how it affects people instead of how it affects the affected. So it was just stories and letters and kind of short essays written from like different family members whose parents or family struggled with different types of addiction, not necessarily drugs or alcohol, but like gambling and stuff like that. So I generally really like stories about addiction. This one just fell a little bit flat for me. The stories kind of bled one into the next and nothing was fantastic or blew my mind. So overall, because I rated each story individually, it balanced out to a 2.5 out of 5 stars and was overall just meh. I finished There's Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins. I feel like I've talked about this novel a lot throughout the month, so I will leave my synopsis very brief. I did do a full review of this novel on my blog, so I'll link my blog down in the description below in case you wanted to check it out. I did have good things to say about it. So this is a young adult thriller following a small town that is suddenly struck by a seemingly random series of murders. It has the setup to be such a strong, mysterious, and thrilling plot, but it lacked both of those things for me. So about halfway through the novel, we find out who the killer is, and it just becomes a story about a manhunt, pretty much, that is somehow still getting away with murders, even though they're a small town. So I still gave this 4 stars because I do like her character development and her writing style and her ability to tell a story. I just think it wasn't as scary as it was plotted out to be. And yeah, I thought it was okay, but you can check out my full review down below. I read The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer by Michelle Hudkins. It took me 3 years to pick up and read this book, and I loved it. So because everybody but me had read this novel briefly, it is about a girl named Mara who moves to Florida following an accident in her hometown that caused the death of her 3 best friends. She can't really remember what happened or what led them there, but it is coming back to her in bits and pieces, which we get strewn throughout the novel. But in Florida, she meets a guy named Noah Shaw, who was everything that BookTube hyped him up to be for me. So they develop a friendship and a relationship, and she just kind of goes through trying to figure out what happened that night and if the things she is seeing and hearing are actually there and actually happening, or if they are just things that her brain is conjuring up as part of guilt or PTSD. So I did give this novel 4 out of 5 stars because I really enjoyed it, but I knocked off 2 half stars for 2 reasons. The first one was that the plot is kind of cliche and kind of typical. It followed a general storyline that I could have predicted a mile away. But the second reason that I knocked off the half a star was the possessiveness. It doesn't usually bother me so much, but in this novel it tended to, especially because it kept being the, are we aren't we? Do I like you? Do I not? But you can't talk to other people. Just stuff like that. Like, I'm not quoting from the book or anything, but it was that kind of a vibe that I couldn't give it 5 stars because I didn't love that. I'm hoping as the series progresses, their relationship develops a little bit better. But I did really enjoy it. I was quite engaged the entire time, so I'm glad I finally picked it up. Another one that I've been holding on to for so long was Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. This was on my 17 books to read in 2017 list, and I am so glad I finally picked it up. This is a young adult contemporary about a guy named Simon who is not out in the gay community or in his high school. He is only out to a guy named Blue that he is corresponding with through emails. He just knows that he goes to a school. He doesn't know who he is until one guy finds Simon's emails and threatens to out him if he doesn't help him with some kind of blackmail thing that I won't even get into because it's not totally relevant, but it's kind of relevant. So this novel I thought was really cute. I did really like it, but I had a couple issues. My biggest complaint is that, like The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer, it was kind of predictable. I don't know if it's because I read so much young adult contemporary that I just kind of know as a writer where I would want the story to go. I wasn't surprised in any way by who he was corresponding emails with. Within the first couple of lines of reading this character, I was kind of like, it's you. And I was right. So it didn't take away from the story, but I would have liked it to be, I guess, a little less obvious or more subtle at least. But I flew through this novel. I read it in a couple of hours, so it was a great way to spend a day off from work. And I'm looking forward to reading her other novel for sure. So 4.25 out of 5 stars. I'm trying to make this video go fast, but I have so many thoughts. Especially with 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. I finally reread this. It is one that I had been hesitant about for so long. I wanted to reread it even before I knew there was going to be a show about it. It is one of the first books that I read when I joined BookTube, going back like 5 years from now. And this was, okay, this is the one I have the most thoughts on, and I almost want to do a separate video just because, as many of you know, I suffer from bipolar disorder. So I relate to a lot of things that happened in this novel. So the first time I read this, I was like knee deep in my depression, and I related to Hannah and I understood her and all of her motives, and it made me angry because I felt like she was justified and nobody understood that, and nobody understood Hannah and what she went through in her life and da-da-da. But then reading it this time, even though I'm still very manic in my life, I related more to, I don't remember his name, Clay. I should have known that. I felt like I sympathized more with him when I understood his anger and his frustration about it. And for me as a reader, as someone that has a strong mental illness, I thought it was amazing that somehow I could read this book twice and get 2 totally different opinions about it. So I give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, which I think I gave it 4 stars last time. Don't totally remember. So I did read this as well as listen to the audiobook for the different voices, and I loved that the actors who voiced the characters portrayed the emotions, so like the anger, the sadness, and you could hear it in their voice. I really appreciated that. A few issues with the writing and the way that the depression was displayed and how it was all handled or whatever. But like I said, I'm still considering a separate video. I do want to watch the TV show. I haven't started it yet. So yeah, make sure you leave me all of your thoughts about the show because I'm really curious to hear what people think about it, especially if you've read the book too. I read The Rules by Nancy Holder and Debbie Bigway. This is one that I just purchased in my last book haul and was super excited to read because I love spooky horror things, as you could tell by like most of the rest of the books that I talk about in this wrap up. This one I was quite disappointed with. It wasn't very popular on my Goodreads, and it was one that I just randomly found at my bookstore. And there's not even much I can really say about it. So it follows a high school party that is thrown by the senior class rich kid. And he does this party every year, but this year there's a twist in that it is portrayed he wants to get revenge on his sister that died, and he blames these people for. So they are all brought to this secluded warehouse style in the middle of nowhere, and their parents don't know where they are because they're underage, so they don't want them to know that they're going to be out drinking. And people just start showing up dead. So they assume it's the guy that was throwing the party, but he's saying he has nothing to do with it. And then everybody's just dying everywhere. So it was interesting in the way that we got different perspectives. So you kind of know who's fishy because you've been inside their head, but you're not sure at the same time. So I didn't find it totally suspenseful. It was very angsty because it's teen drama and ex-boyfriends or like current crushes, and it was just a lot of kind of unnecessary things. I would have rather focused more on the horror and the detailings of the killings and like whatever. So it wasn't terrible. I didn't consider giving it up at any point, so for that reason I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. Just 2, not 2.5, 2 out of 5 stars. It's Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. I went into work super early one day so that we could do a bunch of work before the store opened, so I decided to take this along as the BBC audiobook because it was only like 3 hours or something, and I loved it. So this is one of the Shakespeare plays that I was supposed to read in high school and I never did because I ended up in the English class that read The Merchant of Venice instead. And I just always wanted to read Romeo and Juliet, but I never did. So I'm glad that I finally got to. I've seen both adaptations of the movie and I love it. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was cute. I thought it was everything that I watched portrayed in the movie. So there isn't really anything I can say about it. It's just classic Shakespeare and I love Shakespeare. So enjoyed this one. So then we get back into the horror stories. I picked up The Dead House by John Kertake. I purchased this again in my last book haul because I was really excited about the spooky horror things. It was one I'd never heard about and found randomly in chapters, so was quite excited about it. Didn't care too much for it. I enjoyed that it was told in different medias, so we get like diary entries and video blogs and like all of this kinds of stuff. But I felt like because we got that, we didn't get so much character development or relationship growth to the characters because we don't really know them. So this novel focuses on researching a school that burned down 20 years ago and one of the girls was never found, so I thought that was going to be really interesting. But as you read it and you understand the plot, the girl Caitlin, or Carly Johnson, has a personality disorder. So she is Carly during the day and Caitlin at night. So that is how one of them disappear, because it's just this giant psychology thing that I'm still not sure how it ended. And that's one of my reasons that I didn't like this novel. But my biggest complaint is that it tried to be mental illness and then possession, supernatural things. So I didn't like the way that they crossed each other because it just tried to find too many similarities, and I think just because of my relationship with it, it was like too close to home and I just didn't like it, and it made me feel very uncomfortable in that way. But it was creepy. I will give it that. There was a lot of like basement settings, and like I just don't like paranormal and like possession. Like I've said, I hate Ouija boards. So this one just kind of struck the wrong nerve for me in a couple of different ways. I did post a full review on my blog, so if you want to check that out, please feel free. But like I said, 2 out of 5 stars. It was alright. It wasn't terrifying. It wasn't spooky. It was just So then I decided to participate in Spookathon, which was the readathon that happened in the middle of October. I did a TBR video about that, and if you watched that, you would be very excited to know I read all of those books but one. I'd picked out 6 books, so I read 5 of them. Not that week specifically, but by the end of the month, like as of right now, I read those books. So the first one that I read was A Tale Dark and Grim by Adam Gidwitz. I was so excited to find this in my library because I'd never heard of it, but I love the grim fairy tales. So this one is interesting in the way that he takes like the classic Hansel and Gretel story, but manipulates it and adds like his own little twist about it. So he takes this entire journey for them throughout their childhood into lower adult years and like makes it funny but dark, and I loved it. So considering this is classified as a middle grade, it was so much darker than I expected it to be. It was very detailed and very gruesome, and he adds fun little commentary that warns you it's going to be dark and gruesome, but you still don't expect it because you're like, oh, it's middle grade, like whatever. But it was, and I really enjoyed it. So the stories all flowed so well into the other and brought themselves back into some of the original ones. So I really enjoyed it. I think this is a trilogy, but following like different characters and like his reimaginings of them. So I will be checking those out for sure, as well as buying my own copy of this first one because I quite liked it. So it's perfect for Halloween or a spooky night in. It's a quick read, so I would recommend you check this out, as I give it 4 out of 5 stars. 4.5 out of 5 stars if I'm being specific, because that half star totally counts, but it might have been my favorite book of the month, if that makes it any better. And because I'm being so specific on my ratings this month, I think it's because so many were either a 2 or a 4. I felt like I needed to go that extra little like quarter or that extra little bit. I read The Missing Girl by Norma Fox Mazer and gave this one 3.75 out of 5 stars. It was more than okay, but it wasn't great. So I read this as the childhood fear because I was always afraid of being kidnapped or lost or missing or forgotten or anything like that. Anything that wasn't safe at home with people I knew freaked me out. Still kind of does. A little bit better at it. So this one follows 5 sisters, and they are very close. They live in a kind of small town. The way that it's written and the way that it's set makes it seem like it's older than modern day. Not by much, like maybe the 80s or 90s. But we also get the perspective of a man that is watching over them every day and ends up kidnapping one of them. So because we get all of these perspectives, including one of the sisters that was kidnapped, we get each sister's perspective and the kidnapper. It makes it more thrilling and kind of more scary because you understand what's happening as they're wondering, and you're inside of everybody's head, including the kidnapper, and it's just odd. It was very short, and the chapter is very short, so I would have liked to see just more character development and to feel more for the sisters instead of being like, yeah, okay. A random one that I picked up in the middle of that week was Explore the Mystery Boxes, edited by Kazu Kibushi. So this is the same graphic author of the Amulet series, which I've read I think the first 2 or 3 books in, and I did really enjoy. This is one I'd had on my wish list for so long, so I was excited that my library got it in. And it's just like a graphic novel anthology where each of the authors write about a box, and that concept was so interesting for me. So I rated each of the novels individually, so I will link my review down below. But I think it was this idea that made me appreciate the creativity that so many people have in the different ways that writing can be interpreted, and just everything about that excited me again. So I really enjoyed it, and another series that I will be continuing on with because I just love that idea. So 4 out of 5 stars. I picked up Nightmares by Jason Segel and Kirsten Miller, illustrated by Carl Kwasny. I am so excited that I finally picked this novel up. Another one that I've had on my TBR forever. I've read through a lot of books that I've owned for a while, so I'm quite excited about that. This one I wasn't disappointed with, but I wasn't in love with. I think my expectations built too high for this one because I'd been holding on to it for so long. But this is about a young boy named Charlie who moves into this purple mansion with his dad, his younger brother, and his new stepmother. And weird things start happening. His dreams start coming to life. So he travels into the night world. I don't know. They called it something and I don't remember what it was called. But basically like where nightmares live. So he just goes on this journey trying to like figure out where his nightmares are coming from and like face his fears. And it was like cute and it's middle grade and it's whatever. So I did listen to this as an audiobook, going back and forth to work or at work or just reading along with it. And if I hadn't listened to the audiobook, I probably would have knocked it a star. But because Jason Segel is such an animated person, he brought so much life to all of these characters and so many voices, and he just made it so much more enjoyable that I actually laughed out loud a couple times. So yeah, I did give this 4 out of 5 stars as well. I had a pretty generic month this month, but a good month. I forgot I read this next book and I just finished it a couple of days ago. Amity by Nicole Ostow. Okay, so this novel follows the classic Amityville horror house, and it takes place 12 years apart. We get two perspectives from Connor and Gwen, and they start getting like possessed by the house, like the classic Amityville story. This was generic but still somehow also boring, but I expected so much more from this because it was given the two different characters in the two different time periods, but it followed like the same exact thing that at points I forgot whose perspective I was reading, which was disappointing because it shouldn't have been that difficult to distinguish. So the writing was lack, the plot was lack, the atmosphere was lack. I wasn't creeped out in any way, and I just kept forgetting what had happened. I was pretty much bored the entire time. But next thing I knew, I had like 50 pages left, and I felt like nothing had happened in the novel. So, I don't know. It was a quick read, but I don't feel like I gained anything from it. So, I actually give this novel 1 out of 5 stars, which, if you know me, I never do. And then the last book that I finished this month is one that I just finished the other day. I didn't even sit and write down any thoughts about it because I'm still collecting them. So let's see if anything really smart comes out in this video. But that is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. This one was pretty solid. So this is another one that was on my 17 books to read in 2017 list, but I was putting off forever, and I'm not sure why. So in this novel, we follow a girl named Libby Day, who is about in her 30s. But when she was 7 years old, her mother and her 2 sisters were murdered, and her brother Ben was arrested for those crimes. So it was deemed a satanic cult killing, and they thought they had all the evidence they needed, but now Libby is kind of running out of money, so she like connects with this group that is willing to pay her to reconnect with people so that they can prove Ben was innocent. So she goes on this journey and learns so many things that she didn't know, which obviously she was just a kid when it happened, but she just accepted what happened. She actually pleaded against Ben, saying, yes, he did it. I saw him do it. So it kind of goes through this journey of what actually happened and shining light, like talking to her father and other people that knew her family. So I thought that was really interesting to read. I love psychological thrillers and stuff like that. The biggest reason that I had to take away from giving this novel a 5-star was on the back. It says, Libby finds herself right back where she started, on the run from a killer. I have to disagree with that slightly. I found that to be a little bit misleading. Yes, it is thrilling, but it never has the, I'm getting close to figuring out what happened. Maybe they'll kill me first. Like, it wasn't as if it was throughout the novel. Like, there was some lead up and there was some suspense, but you kind of see it coming, and I feel like Libby probably should have too, but she's a little naive since obviously losing her family. Like, she never developed social skills, so that made her a really interesting but unreliable character to read. But I don't know. It wasn't totally thrilling for me. It was more mysterious. So I enjoyed that aspect of it, though. I did think it was a really solid read, and I will probably give more of her books in the future. I've read 2. I don't think I'll be reading Gone Girl just because I've seen the movie and I know exactly how that plays out. But did really enjoy it, so 4 out of 5 stars. So because it is the 29th, I will mention that I'm reading It by Stephen King still. I'm about 200 pages into that. And I am also reading Legacy by Crystalline Drown. So my Goodreads is always linked down below if you want to keep up to date on whether or not I finish either of those 2 books by the end of the month. Doubt it will be one of them, but Legacy I might because it's a little bit short. That is one that I received from NetGalley like 4 years ago, and then I stopped using NetGalley, and I feel bad that I was approved to read it and never read it. So I am going back through all of my old NetGalley approvals and fixing all of those ratings that I never read. So yeah, you can follow my Goodreads if you want to know what I think of Legacy when I finish it. But other than that, tomorrow I will be posting my November TBR, which I will be filming after this one, so don't be surprised if you see the same outfit and very laid back Christina. But yeah, if you read any of the books that I talked about, make sure you let me know what you thought of them down below, because that is the whole point of posting these videos, is that we can discuss our different tastes in books. And yeah, I'm looking at my November TBR and it's already freaking me out. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.